Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of JKL Media, where three wonderful friends talk about wonderful stuff. I am one of your wonderful guest hosts, Jesse, and joining me as my other host is the wonderful Karen
Hello.
and the
It's
wonderful Lou.
wonderful to be here.
Yes, the wonderful Lou.
It's a wonderful life, and we're here to light things up with for you.
That's
And
right.
we are here to talk about the wonderful series Watchmen from HBO. We are talking about episode 5 and 6, Little Fear of Lightning, and this extraordinary being. And they both came out in November of 2019, which is very interesting when you think about what happened in 2020, where mask
Mhm.
became not a rarity. I am so excited to talk about these two episodes. Let's start with you, Karen. Quick takes on either one of them. I guess let's just talk about both of them. So, thoughts on these?
I love Wade as a character. So to have him be the center-ish of an episode, I thought was great. We got to see like his backstory, why he had mentioned in an earlier episode, he had talked to, I think, Angela about the squid rain and had mentioned that he was interested in that and he got a couple of samples and now we know why. And I got to say right now, they went back in the past and they played a couple of songs and I love them both. Howard Johnson is, I went through a Howard Johnson phase. Howard Jones, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the hotel. Howard Jones, they played Things Can Only Get Better. I think he's underrated, but I really did go through like a severe Howard Jones phase. And then we get Careless Whisper. And I think they both really set the tone of that past thing. And they're upbeat. And that whole sequence is not upbeat. Even the part where Wade is proselytizing to the people and doing things, I think it's very severe. And I like having that episode because it's from the movie as well. I like seeing it from a different perspective from someone who was there and now has PTSD from it, and why he has so many bad things happen to him right in that hour. And I can see why his life is weird, why he wears the mask that he does. And we got to see that. I don't remember if it's in the first or the second episode with the hat, him putting the tinfoil in there. It's not tinfoil, but to protect from the psychic blasts. I just loved seeing him and seeing his real job, quote unquote, of sussing out liars in the product testing groups, focus tests. I think that's funny. I've been in a focus test and it is really a mob mentality thing, except for I just didn't go along with it. I gave my true opinion of whatever it was. It was really a terrible thing. It was a food item and it was not good. And people are saying, oh, it's so great. I said, no, it's really not. It's terrible. It's salty. And I like seeing that he's saying, yeah, it's all bullcrap. They don't want to come to New York. And I think some of that is his projection of New York. And some of that is him sensing in those people, yeah, they're not coming back to New York.
Yeah, the premise is that he is a human lie detector, right? That
Right.
he can tell that people are lying. So yeah, how about you, Lou? Initial thoughts on these two episodes?
I really enjoyed A Little Fear of Lightning from the perspective of showing how childhood or early life events can really change the course of a person's life. And we see it quite starkly with the Wade Tillman's character. It's a sad it's a sad story in a lot of aspects. And in the next episode, The Extraordinary Being, we get a revelation about that whole thing that, or no, we get it in this episode actually, that about the cause of that incident and that a lot of his fears are unfounded. But in some ways, it's the truth is even more brutal. And I'm going to be really curious to see where that character goes for the rest of the series. If he gets out alive, based on what we saw in the very last scene of that episode with all the Rorschachs entering into his house. So I'll
Yeah,
keep
they're
that.
7th Cavalry too.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you did. I'm just
Oh, okay.
saying they're the racist dudes. We got to
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
And as good as this episode was, like this extraordinary being just blew me away on just so many levels. From you go across the board of all the technical aspects of making a movie or a TV show. This one was just fantastic with the use of color, going from color to black and white, and the music, the kind of because Angela is experiencing these flashbacks from her grandfather. They can do a surrealistic mixing of like having the piano out in the middle of the street, and it's not weird because it's not really, she's not really in a set reality. And then it had the best use of bullet time that I've seen since the original Matrix, with the the character jumping through the storefront window and then stopping and then rotating around, and then we could see Angela's eyes in the mask. And I thought that was just a really clever use of that kind of technology. As good as Little Fear of Lightning was, this extraordinary being just really blew that one out of the water, which is a shame for the actor of Little Fear of Lightning, because it was a really good episode as well. But yeah, two really strong episodes. And then all the Osmondeus stuff that we're getting, and the reveal of where he actually is. I thought he was on the moon from Earth, but he's on a different body. That was very cool as well. So yeah, two really strong episodes, and I just can't wait to finish the rest of the series, which we will do in the next time we get together.
Yeah, so just to give a little bit, and then we're going to get into details. The Steph Green was nominated for Outstanding Directing for Little Fear of Lightning. Stephen Williams was nominated for an Emmy, This Extraordinary Being. The Outstanding Cinematography, Xavier Grobert, Little Fear of Lightning, was nominated. Gregory Middleton won Outstanding Cinematographer for This Extraordinary Being. Writing for a limited series, Damon Lindelof, Cord Jefferson, This Extraordinary Being. Let's see, single camera picture editing, nominated for This Extraordinary Being. Anna Hagar, Outstanding Music Supervision. Eliza Richardson, This Extraordinary Being. And the Trent Reznor, The Way It Used to Be from This Extraordinary Being was a nominee. This series was nominated, and I think part of the problem is it competed against itself.
Yeah.
I think I loved from the very first episode I was in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But these two moved it to a different level for me.
Yep, for sure.
Of going, oh, they've directly connected this to the miniseries, the graphic novel, the movie, by having the idea that 11-2 is like our 9/11. You say 11-2 and everyone knows immediately what you're talking about. And to have Wade, this religious Jehovah Witness, and we're just going to go. And you knew when the lady started to, oh, I want to explain more, like you knew this wasn't going to end well. And I love the scene when he's talking to his ex-wife, and he said, I did have a good woman. And she said, yes. And I spent 7 years trying to basically qualm your fears that I was going to run off with your clothes.
Yeah.
And there is during the group where they have the AA discussion, the Friends of Nemo, where he talks about that there is generational trauma, where even though it didn't happen to me, it happened to my parents, and therefore it still affects me. I just thought was really interesting. So, I also love that Gene Smart calls him Mirror Guy.
Yeah.
And
you can have it.
Yeah.
It's available.
Yeah. And then you bugged my cactus? I'm in the FBI. We bug shit. Right. Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit of everything. There's so much dense in this episode. Then I want to get to the extraordinary being. But Wade's whole life is built around this trauma of him being in Jersey, Hoboken, almost at dead center of the squid coming, and talking about how this has affected everything in his life. And people make fun of him. Oh, are you one of those people that puts the tinfoil in your wearing the tinfoil all the time? And he runs those drills all the time. He is petrified that he's going to get stuck in another one of these, even so that he's leading a AA group, a Friends of
Yep.
Nemo group, which is, I assume, Nemo, the captain of the Nautilus that fought a squid.
Yeah. Actually, that's where the title of this episode comes from.
Yeah,
It's a line from Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the
yeah,
Sea. If there were no thunder, men would have little fear of lightning.
yeah.
So
And,
it
and there's
is
also,
definitely.
by the way, there is I did not know this till afterwards. I'll leave it entirely in your hands, is the very last line of the graphic novel. When the guy finds the Rorschach journal and the one running the newspaper says, I'll just leave it in your hands. And that's repeated several times in this episode. Karen, let's talk about, we get this, he's a lie detector, he's having all this trauma, and then Senator Keene says, I'm about to blow your mind. I'm going to make you where you're not afraid. But what do you do if your trauma has been your sense of identity and someone takes that trauma away? So really go
Right.
anywhere you want in this episode. And Lou, jump in anytime.
Yeah. It's definitely made him who he is. And for him to, first of all, we see that the senator isn't all that he appears, which we had postulatized. But I can't imagine how I would feel if the rug was pulled out from under me like that, with such clear evidence that it was not what I thought it was, that it was a manufactured thing. And it wasn't this thing that I have to protect myself from. I also appreciate, we see him with the, I guess it's called EDS or whatever, the defense system. I like that. First of all, the way he talks to that dude on the phone, I don't give a crap about you're not testing every 6 weeks or whatever. I just want a new one. And so they send him a new one. And near the end of the episode, we see him find it on his porch and he goes to throw it away. And it's so ingrained in him. He can't let it go. He has to go and get it back out of the trash because that is so much a part of him, the PTSD over that. I get that. I can see where that would just be so a part of his personality that ditching it right away wouldn't be an option. He understands it on his brain, gets it. The way his heart feels about it, his heart is not in it yet. And I love this part of Wade that we see that vulnerable little boy, not little boy, young guy. And we can see how I feel like he was indoctrinated back then. And now he has been indoctrinated his whole life about this squid thing happening and psychic blast or whatever. And now he's going to be indoctrinated again, trying to get Angela set up, trying to get her off the plane. And I think there's something worse going on there. Yeah, we won't hurt her. What? Come on. Of course you will hurt her because you're racist. You're going to try and kill her. And I also found it interesting that Wade went along with it, that he set her up. He knows he's being bugged and he set her up with the illegal drugs. I found this episode so incredibly interesting. And I thought to myself when I was done with it and those dudes go into his house and I'm like, boy, this show is just getting better and better. And then the next episode, and it blew my freaking mind, the next episode. So yeah, I really loved hearing about Wade. And you told me that there was going to be a disturbing scene. I'm assuming it was the dog.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Worse stuff happens in this
Yes.
miniseries. So I'm just going to deal with it. They know that I have issues with killing animals in
Yeah.
shows. This was a little less jarring to me because I could say it was a manufactured
Yeah.
being. I put blinders on during that. It did bother me a little bit, but so many worse things happen in this show that it's overshadowed.
But it is I was disturbed because this casualness that
Right,
the
right.
premise is that they can clone your animal so that you never lose a pet, that
Right.
you always have Chuck or Ranger or Charlie or whatever your dog is. And
Or cat,
yeah, and
because
so
Chuck's a cat.
they're looking at Wright and he's going, do they look alike? And he goes, they're like,
That's
do
a
you
little
want them?
smaller.
Yeah, okay.
What
And
am
she
I
goes,
gonna do with the dog?
she
Yeah,
just puts them in the recycling bin the same
right.
way you would do, okay, I'm going to my 3D printer didn't quite work, so I'm just going to recycle and then we'll print another copy.
And that's how but the same things happen with the servants on the planet with Ozymandias. He does the same thing there, the literal same thing with clones.
Yeah.
And I have to say that part, we haven't even gotten to that part where he's
Yeah.
still trying to get out. That was really cool. And seeing all of the servants that he's done that to, and they're all like popsicles. He's just picking them up and making an alert, a save me, I'm marooned SOS thing. It was surreal to see that. And how did he know that was going to work? That one. That's the one he decides he's going to do on his own.
And why? So, do you have any theories of how he got on this moon?
No,
And
I'm assuming it's Io. I'm
okay,
assuming because they've
yeah,
talked about it, and that was definitely Jupiter in the
yeah,
background, I
Yeah.
think. I'm trying to connect that. Why is he there? Did they exile him? Is the game warden Tom Meissen as well? That's one of my questions. Is he one of the clones? And is that where he's getting all these other clones from? I don't know. He's definitely, there's so many questions about him on this moon. He has now signaled a satellite, and I'm guessing he's trying to get a message to someone that's sympathetic to him to come and get him. That whole story is just insane. And
any theory on who he might be trying to reach out to?
I have no clue.
Yeah, the only person I can think of is Dr. Manhattan, but I have a feeling that Dr. Manhattan's the person that put him there. So
Right.
Besides that, and I don't know in 2019 what their space capability is, so who can save him except another superhero?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan's a great guess. A great guess.
Okay.
But why would he save him is what my question is. Although
Okay.
we do know that Dr. Manhattan kind of understood his rationale behind the squid and the psychic blast. He wasn't as convinced that Adrian was this supervillain. He had some sympathy towards it in the book. So I can see where maybe he would come and get him and find that he's unjust. And I don't know. That's a really good theory. I have no idea otherwise, because who would be sympathetic to him?
Yeah.
At least superhero wise.
Okay. I do want to know your thoughts on we don't know who these clones are. We know he is using them, as you said, just the same way that they're doing with the pets. And so and he seems almost callous to them.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
there is no thoughts whatsoever. I did love the scene where he's on the moon and he's just casually creating the same way you would try to make a signal fire with driftwood. Oh,
with frozen clones.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
Yeah,
and he's breaking off their limbs in order to make them fit. It's so surreal.
It is a little, yeah, as you talk about, this is a little bit of craziness.
Hmm.
All right. Do you anything, Lou, anything else on Way that you want to share about this whole story? And then we'll get to the whole next experience that we find out what the pills are. They're nostalgia,
Yeah.
which was originally a pill that they made for people with Alzheimer, right? The idea
Hmm.
that you could save your memories and then you could use them for good. But as Gene Smart said, why do you want to live in the future when you can live in the past? And we're getting to that next episode, but his wife says, tell your girlfriend not to do this because this is bad.
Hmm.
I did want to give a shout out to the actress who played the new meeting member, Paula Malcolmson.
Yeah, she's been in a lot
Okay.
of SF stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's really good. Also, I am a true in real life anti-smoker, but I always love in TV how smokers can often just look really sexy.
Right.
The idea when she's
Yep.
smoking and he
Which is
says,
how they get you.
yeah, that
Yep.
does smell, it sure does smell good. They acknowledge that tobacco is a controlled substance as well as marijuana. And any thoughts on the movie Pale Horse? I'll start with you,
Yeah.
Lou, and then Karen. Let's go. Any thoughts on, because obviously this is instead of Schindler's List, Spielberg made Pale Horse. So thoughts on that, Lou?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting parallel to our world. Obviously, if they did not have this big event with the squid, then there, and maybe there is a Schindler's List in this world as well, but because this is more recent in this timeline, it obviously has a bigger relevance to a lot of the characters that are alive today in that world. So I thought that was a very interesting textural addition to the series. They've done a really good job of building out this parallel timeline or alternate timeline or whatever you want to call it with all these kind of little details. So the fact that's her favorite movie is pretty cool. She was obviously trying to make a connection with Tillman about that, but he doesn't seem to watch anything, so he had no clue what she was talking about. And circling back to Tillman, I think Karen made a great point, the fact that he was already in a cult, and no offense to people that are of that religious persuasion, but he was already indoctrinated into the Jehovah Witness religion. So he has a personality that some people are just want to be followers. And it's interesting because in a way, he's on his own path. And maybe that's because the fact that he's got the ability to detect lies. And I don't know if that's been locked into as what the origin of that was. Is it because of the psychic blast, or did he have that ability before? I don't know. I guess it's not too big of a point that has to be covered, but taking his shock and the fact that you can tell when people are lying, what chance does this guy have of having a normal relationship? Because let's face it, all relationships are built on little white lies because
Hmm.
we don't want to hurt the other person's feelings all the time. And you just learn to have a sort of unspoken give and take about, yes, this irritates me, but then you do this other thing that I really love. So I'm gonna live with the bad so that I can get to the good. And that he doesn't have that. So he's really isolated. And the the reflecting that he wears was the equivalent of tinfoil. So I really like that aspect of it. But he's a pretty tragic character, and his arc really makes me empathize with that character quite a bit. And then the whole reveal from the senator about the fact that the 11/2 event was engineered by Voight is that's a big shocking thing. And if that was revealed to the rest of the world, and it's hard to believe that it wouldn't have been, because it seems like everybody's that in a sort of political affiliation is aware of this video. It's hard to believe that the general populace doesn't know about it as well. But I just loved, what's Jeremy Irons' delivery during his speech. He's kind of drop, 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 kind of chopping off his words a bit, and that, and the revelation that he's engineered Robert Redford to be the president was interesting as well. So yeah, there's just so much good stuff in this episode, and a really tragic character, and the fact that he's wearing that reflecting visor mask is just a great visual of his character. He can't let the world in. He can only, it's reflecting off of him, but he's trapped. He's really trapped. And yeah, what else can I say about this episode? That in any other series, this probably would be like the standout episode of a season. But for this character, and I have to come clean that I totally blew my prognostication about what the pills were for. I thought they were going to give somebody like superpowers, and I guess in a way you can say they did.
You kind of
Yeah.
do.
I had no idea they were going to be memory related. That was cool to find out. And the dog scene was chilling in that how cold and clinical it was. It's like when Hal kills the other astronauts in 2001. There's no,
Yeah.
it's just like all the displays just kind of go flatline. Or in the original Star Trek episode, A Taste of Armageddon, where there's generated war and the casualties have to report to these just tubes to fulfill their obligation of whether or not they were killed or not. So it's that same vibe, and you have to wonder if there's no animal activist groups in this world, because
Yeah.
I don't think they would be very happy with what's going on there. Yeah, that's just a really good world building episode, especially coming in from the first episode, where I remarked earlier that I was a little confused because they were of the timeline jumping that they were doing, and I thought the order wasn't quite the way I like it. But now it's flowing in a much more linear fashion, and I think for this kind of world building, it's a better way to do it, because even though this is mostly a flashback episode, or a large portion of it is a flashback, but it comes at the right time after you've established the current world timeline, so it has more impact. But yeah, it was just a great episode, and I'm really going to wonder how he's going to survive what looks like a pretty big hit that's coming on him at the end of this episode.
Yeah, and I really love where, in the group they're talking about, I don't want to be one of those crazy people that wear the whatever that
Reflecting.
material is. Yeah, that reflective
Reflecting.
music all the time. And Wade's, look, he's lying. I was in the tunnel. You can trust me, even though he still is in the tunnel. And he shares that.
He's definitely in the tunnel.
Yeah. And
that mask covers his whole face.
Yes.
Where other people, their eyes are still viewable. Yeah. He just doesn't want to show anything.
And we also, he wears it when he's eating the cold beans, which is a direct homage to Rorschach eating beans in the Watchmen graphic novel. We are seeing scenes of the hero, the American hero, that story.
That was an interesting scene.
Yes.
Why did he go right to that scene?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And we find that out in the next episode, right? I just think everything about this, and I love when the senator goes, "Oh, do I still have my mask on?"
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was idiot. I'm not trying to. And the whole idea is the White Knight happened. I came down here to stop the 7th Cavalry from being even crazier. And then his friend Judd took the police, so that both sides, they're controlling the 7th Cavalry, the Klan, and they're controlling the police. And they both have masks now at this point.
Yep.
And there is that great sign. How do you tell the difference between a vigilante wearing a mask and a criminal wearing the mask? And I can't either. Yeah, so we set this up. I think it's really good, and it's a great cliffhanger. And I believe Wade, because the senator says, I either can put her aside somewhere safe, I can kill her whole family to take her off the board.
Right.
Whichever, I don't care either way. And so I think Wade picks.
I think that means that he's part of the 7th Cavalry, even though he is trying to say they're idiots and he's just in on it.
Oh, he definitely is the leader of
them.
Yeah. And we set up this wonderful where what's going to happen. So
can I mention
please.
Paula Malcolmson, who plays Renee in that episode? I like her everything she's been in. She played the mother in the Hunger Games.
Yeah,
She was on Deadwood, Ray Donovan,
wonderful.
Tombstone.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She is also Irish,
Ah,
which you've heard her accent every once in a while come through in things that you've seen. Not in this. She's doing a really good job in this. I don't know if she's a one-off, but I always like when I see her in things. She's a great actress.
and by the way, someone asked the guy who's hosting the official podcast, said, so when it mattered, his lie detector didn't work.
Yep.
And he said no, because remember, she said, I really am a radiologist.
So she
So,
wasn't lying. She just omitted
yeah,
parts of her.
yeah,
And I like that she went into all that knowing that he could catch her lies and
yeah,
still tried to be a good wife to him. She had this mountain to climb and she decided she was done climbing
yeah,
it.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so we go to the next episode, and this is something special. Basically, the whole hour is a trip from, most of it is from Angela's viewpoint. She has taken her grandfather's memory pills, way too many, so she is seeing the past through his eyes. And they said that in many cases that they did practical effects. In other words, like at the police station, when the camera moves to the guy at the guard, the actors would switch. And so when they came back to the camera, it would be the other one.
Yeah.
So this is they continually go back and forth of which one. She is sometimes her grandfather, sometimes they show the actor playing the grandfather. We find out who the young girl is. It ends up being his wife. That is Angela's grandmother.
June.
Yeah, we determine they have a son, which is her father. We're going to find out what happens to that. Lou, you talked about this, not to be, pardon the pun, extraordinary episode, but talk to me through some of the highlights and what you like. By the way, there is a theory that Fred, played by the great character actor who plays an attorney in Billions and other things, was based on Donald Trump's father, who is also a
Fred Trump.
Fred Trump. Yes.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, what can you say about this episode? It just covers so much of the social background of North America, because I'm not going to just limit to it's focusing on the States, but this is something that's common to all the countries. And it's a lot of carryover from World War II, or I don't even know if they have it. That would have been before World War II, World War I maybe. But it just answers so many questions too. I was wondering what happened to the baby girl from the Tulsa thing, and we found out that he did grow. She grew up to become his wife, and Will Reeve's wife. And I like his last name because Christopher Reeve and George Reeves, and so
Yeah.
it fits in with that mythology, a Superman hero character. And then the fact that as Hooded Justice, he has to white out his skin around his eyes, which shows through the mask, so people think he's a white person. And that because even the Minutemen, who were supposed to be standing up for truth and democracy and all that, some of the members wouldn't be as welcoming if they found out that Will was a black man. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. And the character that you referenced earlier, Fred, who's based on Trump's father, I don't know whether that's true or not, but possible. But the fact that he can, with nonchalant care or abandon, just torch a Jewish deli and know that he's going to get away with it, just really blows my mind. And then you got this whole thing with a Cyclops, which is interesting, an interesting symbol because it looks like a squid that they're putting on their forehead.
It really doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's all tied in, and we didn't touch on it, but the previous episode is that at that point in time when the squid showed up, there was a real fear that the U.S. and Russia were going to go to a nuclear war, and Voight, I don't know how you say
Yeah.
his last name, set up the whole squid thing to divert attention from that. And so in a way, he saved the world, but my God, what a cost that was. Yeah, just on every level, this episode just blew me away. Aesthetically, this, as I mentioned previously, like the drifting in and out of black and white and color. The music, that one song in particular, which is the start of the Shawshank Redemption. So I'm already automatically pulled in
Yeah.
the Ink Spot song. But yeah, there's a lot of great old music in this episode. And it's funny, like when I was younger, I couldn't stand listening to that kind of music, but now as I'm older, I really appreciate a good voice, which in a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of modern music is congested with all the other stuff that's going on with rock, drums, guitars, synthesizers, auto tuning. So to hear these untouched voices just adds so much atmosphere to this episode. And it's funny to, or it's interesting because we've seen a lot of shows based on type of shows. To see how the Minutemen are depicted in that clip that Wade was watching in the previous episode against reality is very, very interesting. The one guy that was talking in that interrogation room, the lead guy, he was one of the kind of thugs in the later seasons of Marvelous Mrs. Mabel as well. So
Yes, he
he's another one
was.
of those character actors that you've seen a ton of times. And I think was he also on Breaking Bad? Was he the partner of the brother-in-law? I think he might have been, but maybe I'm
I
confused.
don't think so.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then the way that they would morph between Angela and Will was very interesting because Will's a very angry person. Angela's a very angry person. I'm really looking forward to seeing how she's gonna come out of this episode, um, how she feels about not just her grandfather, but herself and what she's doing. So yeah, there's just so much going on here. And then like at the very end when Will goes like full Punisher or Deadpool or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, and kills all those cops and then burns up the theaters. And that technology that they were using at the time is what he uses later on in this episode. And I'll leave that sequence for later. But though I was worried of people who have issues with going into seizures from strobing, that was probably the strongest strobing effect I've ever seen in an
Hmm.
And
episode.
they gave a warning, right?
Yeah,
Before
but
the
Yeah.
episode. Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
that was wow. That was really
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, I had to do this. I do have seizures,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's not light affected.
Oh, okay.
It was disturbing to me a little bit, but it didn't.
Yeah.
I could deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, this episode is something really special on so many levels. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming that it probably won every Emmy that it was nominated for because it
It
was fantastic.
yeah, as I was going through, it was nominated for a bunch, and one of the sad things is it was the 2020 Olympic Emmys where because of COVID they didn't do an in-person event.
Right.
And
Yep.
so they were a couple things behind the scenes. This was a very diverse writing room. They had not only in race and gender, but one of the writers was a former police officer. She was a Black police officer, second generation. So she said, in many ways, when I started the job, I was already jaded because I had seen the amount of prejudice my mother had faced. And it is so blatant, right, that the chief won't even shake his hand.
Yep.
And so the Black officer is based on a real police officer from that time, one of the first African American officers. And oh, I get to the honor of badging your badge on. And I love June saying, they gave you a badge, they've given you a gun, a stick. I'm worried what you're going to do with the anger. And then she comes back and goes, this mask didn't help your anger. It made it even worse. And just to give you a little bit, in Watchmen, the only character they never tell who is Hooded Justice.
Yeah.
It's implied it's that strong man, but they
Yeah.
never absolutely tell it. And so when they started this, Damon Lindelof said, why would they not tell us? What about this made it so they couldn't tell us? And that's when he came out, what if he was Black?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thought that led him to say, I could do a Watchmen series.
That's
And
awesome.
that's the reason why he's not done a third season, is he hasn't had that thought yet. And he's never said no. He said 10 years from now, if he comes up with something he would want to do. But I thought, because once again, after the fact, it makes so much sense why you wouldn't show this, what to do, and not hiding that you're gay. That's
Right.
what you would think would be the thing you would want to hide away in this pre-World War II. It's the idea that a white superhero was actually black. Karen, your thoughts, because Lou's shared, I've shared. I want to make sure
Yeah.
give you a chance.
That whole beginning sequence where it's obviously from American Hero story, the story within the story kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it unmasks him as a
Yeah.
white guy, as the wrestler. Cheyenne, his name is Cheyenne Jackson.
Yeah.
I knew him from The Masked Singer, where he came in third in his season. He is a prolific Broadway actor and singer. And I thought it was interesting to have him in this role, just as a little drop in. He does look like a superhero when you look at him. He's got the square jaw and the and all that. And it was interesting to see how Hooded Justice came about. His costume, it has deep meaning for him. It's the mask, it's the hood that they put on him to lynch him, and the same rope. And it's just, it's amazing to see. And in the same way that we saw Wade in the last episode affected by his past, we also see it here in Will.
Yeah.
Where his trauma comes into how he is later on in life. That he decided to be a police officer, black or not, just he decided he was going to try and, I think, subvert any kind of riot. He wanted to be in on that to make up for what happened in Tulsa when he was a boy. The fact that he has bonded so much with June that they got married, but that's not his preference. I think he truly is gay in his real life, but because he and June share all these experiences, they got married. And it is apparently taboo to be gay then as well, because they do make a passing reference to the fact that that's one thing, but you're black too.
Sex stuff, as the other guy says.
Sex stuff, right? Yeah. In the American, yeah. I thought that was cool. And then they completely subvert that with Will being a black superhero. And the guy, what's his name? The guy who comes to see him and he has the little thing with.
Yeah, Captain Metropolis.
Right, thank you.
Such a white guy. And June's, is there any chance that Captain Metropolis is, what are you trying to imply? So funny.
Yeah, and you can see that he admires Will for getting this whole thing started. But other than that, he could care less. He couldn't care less about him. He doesn't want to go after the squid people. And again, we get that motif of the bullet hole in the forehead that was in Watchmen.
Yeah.
And go ahead,
Karen. Oh, I was just going to say, and I love the fact that when Hooded Justice tries to say they stop him, no, Morlock. But before that, let's talk about how you can keep your money.
Yeah, it's a plug for the bank, which it's so interesting. And they just are not interested at all in indulging. They don't care about racism. They're okay with it.
You're going to have to solve
your black problems on your own.
Black unrest on your own. But if you want to come over for a quick booty call...
Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to see you.
Yeah, there was that scene. If you want to come over, and he's
love to see you.
Look, I'm in a life or death situation here, and you're propositioning me. Yeah. And then he does go all vigilante, like 100%. Yeah. I love how he kills Fred, because Fred is the biggest dick in this
Yes.
episode. Um,
Oh, gonna get you some big
and
steaks, though, based on what I've heard.
oh my
You're not
God.
lacking in that department,
Wow.
you
And
know.
meat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in
You've
meat.
got
Yeah.
plenty of meat.
And what's funny
Gross.
is because, quote unquote, everyone looks alike, he doesn't
He
realize
doesn't
that
put
this is,
together
yeah,
that it's the policeman. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And here's the thing, right?
yeah,
It's a fictionalized account of an alternate universe, the trope. However, that's what life was like then in real life.
yeah,
You could get away with anything as long as you were white and the recipient was another race,
yeah,
Jewish, black, whatever. And that's what happened. You get taken in by the police and it's a wink, wink, we'll let you go thing.
hmm,
And knowing that once he got into that warehouse and found them all with the projectors and everything, it was all his fellow policemen.
yeah,
And he sees the seedy underbelly, and you can understand why he went on to be the way he did, and that he ended up killing Judd with that same technology because he knew that Judd was into some bad stuff. And that's echoed in the movie he watched with Bass Reeves, which is where he
yes,
took his name from, we know, where Bass Reeves says justice will out, but he sees a different side to that in that justice isn't going to work this time.
yeah. And I love that she says that. She says they're
Yeah.
never going to. This was so important to him. I wanted this idea that justice is going to prevail. And that was so strong to him. And it's just not reality.
And I think the turning point, part of the turning point was when the black policeman comes up to him and says, pretty much in plain terms, you're not going to have an easy road here. And I'll give you a hint to something that's happening, and I'll shake your hand and do this. But he knows that everyone else around him hates him.
Yeah.
And that right there, he sees the captain's not going to shake his hand, not going to do anything. He brings in the white guy and they brush it off. He's seeing that his view on life and justice is not valid in the eyes of anyone around him, and he's not going to be able to hold that up. Mm-hmm. And I think he becomes more and more disillusioned, and the fact that they try to lynch him, just every single little thing is building up to that point where he breaks and he just, and well-deserved, kills all of those dudes, takes the one projector, destroys everything, sets the whole thing on fire, which again, Fred sets the deli on fire and he turns it around and sets his warehouse on fire. He's already dead, but I feel like maybe he had a sense of like retribution for that. And I hate it and I love it at the same time because you get to see his progression into madness in a way, just well justified, but still there's that little bit of he's become a little unhinged with it. And
that when he gets upset with his son,
right,
that his son is doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That his son is trying to follow in his footsteps. He doesn't want his son to be that. He wants to make the world better for his son, so he won't have to do that.
Yeah.
And I do think it was smart of June to take the son away, because at that point it wasn't safe for him to be there. It's that trope of the superhero has to hide his face in order to save his family. And in this case, he has to save Black people in general by putting the mask on. And I like how he's a hero when he puts the mask on and pretends to be white. But when he's a Black policeman who should be the hero, he's the villain to everyone. It's just such a dichotomy. I loved it. And I appreciated how well they did the transitions between showing Angela's face there, and then they would turn the camera around so that something passed in front of him.
Yeah.
And it was Will. That was so good. I also liked the scenes where they're trying to break through to her and Cal's reading her that script saying, You're Angela Abar, you're trying to break her out of it. And she didn't want to break out of it.
No.
So she's not going to hold on to that. And she does go back into it. Um, and we see her finally waking up. She hasn't given permission for them to pump her stomach, but in order to quote unquote save her life, Lady True, who invented the pills in the first place, is trying to, work them out of her system. Just the whole episode was a masterful story and the pinnacle of, and you said the practical effects, even better, just the pinnacle of putting you in the perspective of someone else where Angela is doing that same thing.
Yeah, and
So good.
yeah, the actor who plays the Metropolis was in the TV show that was based on Unlimited. It based on the movie where Limitless, where you take the pill and you could do only
That's
got one
interesting.
season, but I think he was really good at that.
I hated him in this.
Yeah, I did think one of the questions you guys had early is how can Lou Gossett Jr. He says he killed Judd, but that's impossible. And
Right.
they show how, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Don Johnson gets to come back and has this discussion and acknowledges that's my legacy. It is, why wouldn't I have this? And Lou showing the Cyclops sign is, I'm like, okay, check off the question. How can 100-year-old man hang a able-bodied young person? Yeah.
I gotta say, you mentioned Jake McDornan, who plays Nelson Gardner. He was in What We Do in the Shadows, which I didn't know until I just looked him up. He plays a pretty funny part in that. That's where I recognize him from.
Okay.
So yeah, one of the ex-husbands in the past.
And Jovan Adepo is the one who plays Will Reeves. I thought excellent
he was
job.
amazing.
Yeah. So we get to the point where she's determined that her grandfather was the first costume superhero. He has faced racism his whole life. He has been silent. He's come back. He has killed her police chief. And she wakes up and now knowing everything, all the way up to the murder. So how much did you guys want to hit next?
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
I wanted to watch the next one right away.
Yeah.
But I was good. I didn't do it.
That's why I told you last time, because I'd read it all, and I just had to go back. So any other thoughts on this episode that we didn't cover? I know we've gone over the place, but yeah, anything else specific?
I've got a couple. Karen bring up the scene for the graduation of the ceremony for the cops. This is a beautiful example of show don't tell. We get the whole thing about what the racism thing is because the white police officer is giving the graduation pins or their badges to all the cops. Yet when he comes to the black cop, he just bypasses him, goes to the next white cop. Beautifully done. The physicality of the fight scenes were just fantastic. You really believe that this one hooded justice character, he just looked like he was really physically very muscular. He was just throwing these white dudes around, beating the crap out of them. But he wasn't invincible. He was taking his licks as well. But he was just doing it on brute sport strength. He didn't really have any he had no training. Like he wasn't a master of any sort of physical fighting. It was just street brawling. And that's how he got through those scenes. And I just thought it was really well choreographed. All done. It looked like in one take. There was no hardly, if there were cuts, I don't really remember them, but maybe that's because I was just so engrossed in the story that I wasn't noticing them. So I thought that was all really beautifully done. And the last guy that he kills is who's doing the recording from the projecting. He reminded me of a young Mads Mikkelsen or something like that.
He did.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know I guess we're going to find out what he does with that projector going forward, but it looks like he used it to build that flashlight that he had at the end of the episode. The only thing I'm not clear on is that how did he know that Judd had the Ku Klux Klan robes in his secret compartment in his bedroom? Like, how did he find that out? And we're still not clear if Judd, that's his legacy, but was he an active member of the KKK? I'm not sure. I don't think that's been established, but I guess we'll have to see. And obviously, I'm really looking forward to the scene when Angela meets her grandfather. Like, how is she going to react? I don't know. That's going to be something. But yeah, just again, I can't reiterate how fantastically this episode was done on every level: editing, music, lighting, directing, acting, you name it, whatever aspect of it was. This was probably the most near perfect bit of a TV episode that I've ever seen in my entire life.
It's very easy to talk about the power of television and what it can do. But I think this is a great episode that is a perfect example of I'm telling an entertaining story, but I'm also talking about something important.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about white supremacy, this society built in of white supremacy. The idea,
Yeah,
and
and
go
I
ahead.
love how it brings in also gay tolerance towards the
Mhm.
LGBT community and
Yes.
how different that is from racism. That you can tolerate that as long as they're not black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting because I know the woke term, which I just
Yeah.
don't understand how that is a negative term. At
Yeah,
I
I
first,
don't
know.
if
either.
I'm
Yeah.
not woke, what am I, a dead or a zombie? I
Right.
don't get the prerogative behind that label. But this episode is to me is a textbook example of telling or broaching these kinds of subjects without I personally don't see how anybody that's apt to label something woke could label this episode as woke. It doesn't make a big deal about any of these things. It just shows them in a very organic way. And I'm sure people who love to throw the woke label around would probably use that
They'd find a way.
term for this
Yeah.
episode. But to me, this is the kind of storytelling where you can broach alternate lifestyles stuff without hitting people over the head with it. This is just their lives. This within this universe, this is just how these people are. They're nobody's standing up and saying I'm gay and da 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 da. Or
Yeah.
and the black thing it was just that's just the way that it was in that time period. And I just think that this episode is a fantastic example of how to do tough subjects without being on the nose about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost how soft you say something makes the impact stronger
Mm-hmm.
And
instead of just yelling it out to
Yeah.
nothingness.
Yeah.
and
They're not,
and I
nobody's
know,
pointing out and say, hey, look at me, I'm gay.
Yeah.
I'm
Right,
gay.
exactly.
and
Yeah.
one of the things I thought was interesting is that I love Karen's take is he predominantly homosexual? Is he bisexual?
Yeah, and
I got
again,
the
that's
feeling
not really important,
it
but I
isn't
don't
important.
think
Yeah.
he's in with June. I think it's just
Yeah.
a shared bond.
And but the idea that and I grew up watching after school specials, so I understand their place, but there is a preachiness to that style of storytelling
Yep.
that isn't here.
Yeah.
Yes,
This is
This
very
I agree.
organic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is very
they're
organic.
telling it like it is.
Yeah.
And one of the things I thought was cool was in the last episode, they did describe that movie, The Pale Horse, and they actually brought in that scene where the little girl is the only thing in color.
Yeah.
And then in this episode, the only thing that was in color was his mother
Yeah.
playing the piano on the day that she died. And that I thought that was really interesting, or at least in the flashbacks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There was
No, I
color.
know
Yep.
exactly
Yep.
what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And the
back
fact that they would show her in little vignettes like, oh, I remember this and this is what
Yeah.
impacted my life. And I think because she took so many pills, she's also seeing jumbled things.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was awesome.
The other thing I was going to bring up is I love the little homage that, yes, Will's story is the Superman origin, and they talk about that action number 1 is showing.
Yeah.
And he goes, this story.
It's like a cross between Superman and Batman, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of the
his
couple in
parents
the alley.
died.
Couple in the
Oh,
alley.
yeah.
They were probably, their last name was probably the Waynes, but they just
Yeah,
never said it.
exactly.
And the premise in this world is because they were real superheroes, superhero comics did not catch up, and that's why there's
Right.
the pirates.
Right.
So
But we do have Action Comics, which
Yeah.
I think is cool.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that started after these Hooded
Yeah.
Justice and all that, because it is in 1938, which
Right.
is when those comics started in our world.
And we did not get any Adrian Veidt scenes, which I think was a very good choice. I think
Yeah.
this episode was too strong to do that wackiness. So we have 3
Agreed.
episodes left. A lot of things to wrap up.
Yeah, the Warden looks like the Green Hornet or
A little bit.
Why is the
Or the Lone Ranger, as it's already, because Bass
Or
Reeves
Kato.
was based. Right. Yeah. Kato.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if that's one of the clones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. But
So we've got 3 episodes left. We're going to go through all of them.
Yay.
If you indulge me, I love doing this. I'm going to open up and we're going to talk about questions you have. What are answers you're looking for? Lou, Karen, either one of you, let's go and I'll write them down. And if you,
I really don't know what the end game is.
Right, same.
Okay.
What's going to happen to Angela? And like Lou said, and this is not in the story so much, but what's the deal with Cal? Because he won Emmys, he was nominated. So when are we going to see that?
Yeah.
There's something important coming up for him. What's going to happen? Go ahead.
No,
Lady True.
Yeah, what's she building? What is that thing?
What's the Millennium Clock? Yeah, exactly. What's going to happen with Ozymandias? Is he going to get rescued by someone?
Is Dr. Manhattan going to show up?
Because they have referenced him a couple times, so that would be interesting. Oh, also the second episode, the title comes from the Night Owl's book. It's the first line of his book. There's always some tie-in to the title of the episode. And they seem so incongruous with the content, but they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. And what's going to happen with Wade? That's a huge question for me.
Yeah. And is Jean Smart's character Blake, is she going to find out who killed Judd? Or is Angela going to keep that to herself? So that would be interesting to see. What else is there?
That's a lot. I'm gonna recap while you guys think. What's the end game? What's going to happen to Angela? What's the idea? What's the deal with Cal? Lady True, Millennium Clock. Is Dr. Manhattan going to show up? How is Adrian going to get off the moon, or does he?
Yeah.
Is Wade alive? And will Lori find out who killed Judd?
Yeah. And also Topher, along with Cal. Because we've seen him. He has to have some kind of importance in the story, right?
And what's the deal with Lube Man? Is he going to show up again?
Because that was weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What else is there? What's Lady True up to? I don't know. Like whatever fell on the Kent's farm, is that Super Baby, or what is that? Or is it just the asteroid that she needs some sort of material from it? She knew it was coming. So is it something on the asteroid that she needs? Or what else?
Well,
what else?
We know that the time is different. The timeline is different between what's happening with Adrian and what's happening on Earth. So has he already come into the story and we just don't know it? Because we see his timeline over years, right?
Yeah.
So where is he chronologically with what's happening on Earth? I want to know that too.
Okay. All right.
Why does she have that statue of him?
Okay.
Lady True.
What is the importance of Topher? Will we see Lube Man again? I added, what is Senator King's plan? And why the watch batteries?
Lithium, I'm assuming?
What is Adrian's timeline? And what about that statue? Okay.
What's Lady True in general?
Yeah.
What's her deal?
Yeah. What fell on the Clark's farm? Yeah. Okay, good. All right.
I think
we're going to watch. Yeah.
That's a lot.
We're going to watch all 3.
Yeah.
We're going to watch all three. Then we're going to be back next week. I hope you guys are enjoying this discussion.
Oh my God.
And if you have not seen Watchmen, first off, you're probably listening to this episode, but I am going to urge everyone that, in fact, I'm going to do on social media to say, hey, look, if you haven't, go back and watch this. It's just, I think it's one of the best made, and I hope you guys think they stick
They're
the landing.
killing it. They're
Yeah, stick
killing
the
it.
landing. Yeah. All right. Karen, if someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I am at Oliveria on the various social medias. And there's a link in my bio on the Twitter machine to my blog, which is alicestuff.com. Bunch of other links there.
Okay. And Lou?
You can find me on YouTube at Lou's Reviews, where you find this podcast along with all the other ones we do, such as Babylon 5, my writer's podcast, my Stephen King podcast, and on Twitter, I'm at Lou W. Sitzma, SYTSMA.
And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Would love some emails about your thoughts on Watchmen.
Let's solicit those on social media too.
Yeah, we have gotten a JKLB5 podcast at gmail.com. We've gotten some wonderful feedback on Babylon 5. I would love some thoughts on Watchmen, and we will look for that on social media as well. All right, guys, we'll be back next week. We're going to wrap up this party, be thinking about what we want to discuss next. And thank you, Lou. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, listeners. And we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
As I'm eating M&Ms.
Let's see.
The proceeding has been a JKL Media production.